this is Sarah, Painty Creator, and I've just done this base drawing for the Eiffel Tower for our going to Paris session. So I don't like the centre of the focus of what we are painting being right in the middle. If you do, you could always place it right in the middle. This one is 10 centimetres from the edge of the paper, and I've drawn a very faint line so that it's straight up and down. This is the edge of the gardens where we're going to be looking over, and then the Eiffel Tower is just this from the centre is 2.5 centimetres either side. This point is 1.5 centimetres either side, and this bit is 0.5 centimetre either side. And I've just roughly drawn the others out, and I'm going to use my sienna masking fluid in order to mask out the Eiffel Tower. So I'll come back to you when I've got that done and dry. Okay, so here we are on A4 paper. It's dry enough to work on. I'm taped onto a board. I'm going to be using my Cotman watercolour paints. They're a lovely set, reasonable price. I also use my Meaden mop brushes. Probably some smaller brushes as well, and maybe even a flat brush. Plenty of paper towel, kitchen roll. I use a spritzer bottle for spritzing my paints and keeping them going. I have 2 big pots of water, one for washing my brushes and one for clean water washes. So we're going to start off with wetting the paper all the way up to this line. There's some nice clean water all the way across, because this masking fluid will repel the water. I think I've still got green in my brush, but maybe that helps you see where my water's been as well. And just mop up this green off this. So make sure your water, you've got plenty of water in the area, and just let it soak in. I'm just checking that we've got water on this top edge, because quite often that dries out quicker. And I'm just going to let that water soak into my paper. At the moment I'm using Creative Peak watercolour paper. It needs to be 300 grams watercolour. This is cold pressed, so it's quite smooth, and it's 100% cotton, which is really important. You'll find that if you're not using 100% cotton, it does dry out a little bit too quickly. So I'm just waiting for the water to stop moving on my paper, but have a nice sheen. And I'm just checking I've got good coverage everywhere. So I've just noticed that a couple of spaces in my masking fluid have popped, so I've got to be really careful not to paint over those, because otherwise I'm just going to get a popped area of, and I just want the brightness. So I'm going to start with some yellow ochre. So straight from the palette, plenty of water, probably a mid-tone, and I'm just going to put a nice yellow ochre wash across here. Keeping it nice and bright. So a little bit thicker yellow ochre. Remember, it will dry round about 30% lighter, so think of that as you are building up your washes. If it looks perfect, it's probably going to be too light. So now we've got the yellow ochre, I'm just going to put a little bit of alizarin crimson in, so quite a watery wash into the yellow ochre. Tiny bits, build it up gradually. And the importance of the alizarin crimson is that it helps stop the blue that we're going to put on turning into a green, because you don't want it green, and it sort of acts as a little bit of a barrier. Okay, I'm just going to spritz this top of my paper because it's drying out and I want to keep it wet. And I'm just mopping up with a thirsty brush. So I wash my brush, take the water out, I'm just mopping this edge up so that it stays nice and loose. Okay, so time for that little bit of alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. So we're just gradually building this wash up. We don't want too much of a harsh transition. So fair amount of water. And I'm just going to turn my board on its side, and that just encourages some of this to actually run down the page. I'm going to add a little bit more ultramarine into this mix, and a touch of alizarin crimson, just nice purple it down. And your skies tend to be darker at the top, so I can load that sky with a bit of a darker wash. I'm going to bring some cloud colour in a minute. It's important that I keep an eye on my paper. This is drying again at the top, so a little spritz, keep the moisture. So using the ultramarine, I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna and ultramarine together for make a darker purple base, and a touch of alizarin crimson, So that will match into the sky a little bit. So this has got less water in the mix than what's on my paper, and that means that I can just drop in this sky colour for the clouds. Nice and dancey. Remember, this will lighten, mix into your wash. So I'm going to make a bit of a thicker, darker mix. So ultramarine blue and just burnt sienna. Almost no water. I'm just going to darken some of the bottom of those clouds. Just spritz it, keep the paper wet. So this is putting some deeper shadows into some of those clouds. And I'm just bringing some wispier clouds. Okay, so I'm just going to finish off some little bits here and there, and then I'm going to let that rest, and then I will dry it totally once I'm happy that the clouds have had a chance to do their thing. I'm just going to suck up this little bit of a bead that's come. I'm just going to take off this off the masking fluid as well. I find that if I keep the masking fluid cleanish, when I take it off it's less likely to stain. Not sure why I've got a bit of blue there, but never mind. So there we are. I'm going to let that dry. I love how the ultramarine and the burnt sienna and the alizarin crimson all separate in the clouds, and it creates a really nice sort of light cloud space. If you wanted, whilst it's still wet, you could lift out some highlights, you could drop in so just a thirsty brush, so a clean damp brush, and you can just lift out some lights if you haven't got the light that you want in there. But I quite like that we've got. I quite like this transition down into these sort of smaller, less defined clouds that you find nearer the horizon. It's got a nice depth with it, so I'm going to leave it and let it do its thing. So here we are, we're dry. We know it's dry when the bubbles have sort of disappeared. I have finished this one off with the hairdryer, but I did leave it a little while to just soak into the paper, and I hope you can see how the burnt sienna, you could have used red light, has just come, particularly in these top clouds, as if the sun's just gleaming off those clouds in the sky. It's a nice sort of fresh wash. So we're going to put some distant buildings in. So I'm now on my small mop brush, and I'm going to pick up some cerulean blue to start off with a touch of ultramarine. So an ultramarine and cerulean blue mix, really quite pale, and I'm doing some sort of very faint building shapes. And then just clean water, wash it down into the base of it. We're going to paint on top of it. So 1 or 2 through here. And then some off in the distance. Adding a little bit of water into this mix, so it's like 99% water, tiniest bit of washing that away. So we've got the start of a very distant view of a town, a city. So we need to just pause and let that dry. So here we are, we're back, we're dry. So I've swapped onto my little number 4 Winsor & Newton synthetic round, just for a little bit more control. So I'm still using the same mixture, ultramarine and cerulean blue, which makes a cobalt blue. And I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of red light into the mix. Just to grey it down, and plenty of water. Just grabbing my little, yep, so we're fine with that. So touch it on the paper towel and paint away the next layer of the city. Control with your paper towel. Don't have to be buildings per se. They just need to be shapes that the eye might see as buildings. And they can go up and down and miss a bit. Just building up a little bit of a cityscape. Okay, so this was a darker mix. I'm just going to add a little bit more red light into there. Get my little bit of So that was that mix. This is the next mix, slightly darker. So a little bit more detail. So just using a bit of artistic license to start to build the idea of a city coming to life. This is just ultramarine and red light. Just keep adding a little bit of water. Build it forward. And towards the edges of a painting, you're always looking for it just sort of fading out and becoming less information wise. So I'm going to go for ultramarine with a little bit of alizarin crimson. So let's go more purpley. Might need a little bit more blue in there. Ultramarine blue, let's have a look. Plenty of water. That's a better colour. Always useful to have a piece of spare paper. Okay, so start building some of the garden foreground here. And I'm going to mix a dark mixture of burnt umber and some ultramarine. And I'm just going to add a little bit of hooker's green into there. It's a very dark, you could have used indigo and some hooker's green if you, so again let's look at, yeah, so a nice dark bluey, might add a little touch more blue into there. Yeah, there we go. I'm just going to swap to my small mop brush. So bringing that nicely forward, we're just adding some of that purple. And you're sort of squishing your mop brush in. Just getting a little bit of salt while it's damp, and I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of salt in there. I might have just got it in enough time. Only the tiniest bit, just for a little bit of a texture on the side. So I'm going to mix some more of that purpley colour. So ultramarine, alizarin crimson, nice bluey purpley colour. And some nice burnt umber and ultramarine. Very nice dark. Just going to add a little bit more ultramarine in there. Okay, so I'm going to get my little mop brush, my little number 4 round, and that purpley colour. Take the excess off of my paper towel, and then I'm just going to build a bit more of a foreground here. Right up to there. I'm picking up some of this dark. Just laying it in. just going to mix up some of this dark with a little bit of ochre's green, or I think that's actually some sap green. Just going to add a little bit of ultramarine into there. Keep the ultramarine going. Just going to drop a little bit into here of that ultramarine and sap green, just for harmony. Because right in the front of here there's a lovely garden space. I'm going to leave some of that light of the paper, touch more ultramarine. Just less paint, more water. Drop in some of that blue. Mix. And then we've got that lovely garden vibe going. I just drop a little bit of that dark under there. Just helps it stand out a little bit. Okay, so carrying on, building. I think I was a bit slow doing that salt here. Don't really think it's doing very much. Never mind, it'll dry. So back to my ultramarine alizarin crimson mix. Let's carry on with doing a bit of a little cityscape. Just a few buildings, building that sort of city vibe. This has dried a little bit. I'm just going to add a little bit more water to it. still carrying on with the same colours that we use for the garden area here. Being a bit bold with some foliage. And just mixing it up on the paper. Again, right up to this edge. Putting in a little bit of green. Layers going. Just take your time. Obviously don't copy slavishly, because I haven't got a clue what the actual Paris looks like. I haven't been for many years. I'm a chronically ill artist, so it's open to interpretation as always, and I think the interpretation is what helps. And leaving some of this light showing through helps as well. I'm just going to add a little bit of alizarin crimson into here, just to get a little bit of a purpley tone going as well. So just mixing it up, doing lots of different bits, but trying to connect them all. So just building it up. A little bit more green, a bit of hooker's green. And there we are. So we've suddenly got a bit of a city vibe going on from that coming forward. We can just add a little bit of Payne's grey into some of these more forward spaces, just to make some more defined buildings. Just helps things stand out a little bit, draws the eye. I'm quite pleased with that. I've got quite a nice cityscape vibe going, so I'm just going to clean off my palette and let that dry. Okay, so I've just sketched out the design really that's on this space. It's like a viewing platform, but before we do that, I'm just wetting it all over with clean water. Just gonna move that up a little bit so we can see. And I'm just going to use a little bit of yellow ochre. Plenty of clean water in there, and I'm just going to put a wash of yellow ochre and lots of water across that area. I'm just going to add a touch of alizarin crimson in, just for a little bit of variety. Remember, it will dry lighter, but I just wanted to tone that brightness of the white down, so I'm going to now just get my hairdryer on it. Okay, so I've had my hairdryer on there, so burnt umber and ultramarine together, and my little mop brush. I want it a bit bluer than that. Mix it in well. Just going to put some more water into this one and a bit more blue into this one. It's a good way of getting different colours that all harmonise. So going straight in with my mop brush. Remember, we are wanting this to look like a painting. It is not a photograph. And so I'm going to pick up some of this darker mix now and just so it's dropping it into a drying wash with a bit of a thicker just changing the angle a little bit. I don't like that angle, but you can, because it's your painting. And then I'm just going to put this dark edge across here, so I'm just using the thinner one for now, thinner mix. And then a bit of a thicker mix. And I'm just going to add some Payne's grey into that thick mix now. Okay, so back into my little number 4 and some Payne's grey and ultramarine blue mixed. So I'm going to darken this so it's not dark enough for me. I'm going to put some burnt umber into this mix as well, so a really dark mix. So ultramarine, burnt umber and Payne's grey mix. Take the excess off. And I'm just going to do a bit of a notice board. Well, I've got that dark on, I'm just going to do some people that are potentially just sat here. Enjoying the time. I'll pick up some burnt sienna, some of this dark mix. So let's have somebody here, and then maybe somebody here. Another person, and then perhaps we've got some people over here. In a bit of a huddle. Maybe there's a little one as well. And then, I don't know, a group of people that are just sat on the wall. Okay, so I'm going to have to use quite dark colours still, because otherwise it will look odd against the skyline, but I'm going to try and use colours that you can see the colour still. When it's mixed in. So this gentleman or person here, maybe he's got an arm. Just some Payne's grey for legs. Could have a cap on. And I'm just going to put a little bit of sap green over the top of his jacket, because I just want that to stand out a little bit more. So just a little bit of red, really darkened down for this person here. Just going to pick up that brown. I've just swapped onto a smaller brush. Using what's on my palette. I think that head's a bit too see-through. The jacket. There we go. Darken that head a bit. Okay. Let's see if we can get some yellow. Just a bit of a dark. I'm battling a bit with these people because it's on dark. I think this chap's having a look at his phone. Just going to put the phone in his hand. Maybe he's taking a selfie. Oh, that's gone dreadfully wrong. I'll get away with it as a shadow. I think the people that we're struggling with. Because they are so dark. Just going to change that to a red. I'm just going to use some of this blue to just dull it down a little bit. I like that flash of red, so we're struggling. Okie dokes, let's put some shadows on. So just some of this crimson into that existing purple wash. We're just going to drop some shadows. Oh, I've missed some people. Flash out. And then I'm just going to do some quick sort of reflection across. A little bit of there we go. So we're ready to take off this and get our painting finished. So here we are, we're free from our masking fluid, and we can now paint our Eiffel Tower. So this is the dark that I had, and because we've got a blue theme, I want to just add a little bit of ultramarine blue into that. So that's basically a Payne's grey, ultramarine blue, bit of burnt sienna mix. And I'm just being quite painty with it. Sorry, I live by an airfield, so as you can imagine. Just darkening that base of there, and then we can go up. And we're just trying to get that idea that it's got its own little structure, but not too fussy. Obviously you can use whichever brushes you're most comfortable using. I like my mop brushes. That's maybe the lift that's going up. And just little sketchy bits. Just darkening the lift. And just adding layers builds a bit of depth. So burnt, umber, ultramarine. Quite thick. Just add a little bit more water to there. Makes a good dark. And this is where you add your flare. So I'm trying to concentrate on the shape. And that light blue behind just lifts. So I'm going to add a dot of vermilion red right on the top. And on these corner posts. I don't know if they have that or not, but if they don't, they should. And then I'm going to add a French watercolour up there, so I'm going to go with a bit of a blue. So for white, I'm going to use some white gouache. And then I better let that dry because that white gouache has just pulled some of the blue. Okay, I think I've rescued it. And then a slice of red. So there we are. I hope you've enjoyed that one. And if you have, please let others know. See you soon.